So, let's talk about DayZ. As many of you may know, the developers stated in a status report on November 28th that we will not be seeing any further large updates in the remainder of 2017. Now this is when a lot of the YouTubers that don't play DayZ but have in the past like to come out of their shells and make videos about how DayZ is dead. Don't worry, I get it. These videos are easy to make, they're a quick view grab, and they'll get people hopping on the hate train faster than a Canadian cop can grab a donut and coffee during Roll Up the Rim. Hugbox's new video, DayZ Dead, 4 years in early access, is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. In this video, I'm going to go over all of the major points that Hugbox made in his video, and I'm also going to gloss over some common misconceptions about DayZ and its development. I'm going to tell you what's true and what's not true. I'm going to give you facts, and when I give you my opinion, I will let you know. There's one more thing I want to make you guys aware of before we get into the meat and potatoes of this video. That is that I am a seasoned DayZ player and content creator. I've been playing DayZ since it came out. I have over 5,000 hours in the standalone and a couple hundred hours in the mod. I've been making videos and streaming the game for over 3.5 years. That means I have a bias towards DayZ, and because of that, I'm going to try and make this video as unbiased as possible. So, now that that's out of the way, let's get into it. I don't want to include Hugbox's video within mine. I don't know how he handles copyright and people using his gameplay in other videos, so I'm going to leave paraphrased quotes from Hugbox's video at the bottom of the screen in this video, and that's how you'll know what I'm talking about within his video. Beta was just around the corner 7 months ago. Well, that's actually not true, and to back up that claim, I went through every single status report from April to the present day, which happens to be the 14th of December 2017. And after going through so many status reports, I found a whopping total of 0 instances that the developers claimed that beta was either just around the corner or that it was slated to come out at a set date and time. The DayZ community is dead. DayZ still has an active player base of between 3,000 and 4,000 people every single day. Now to me, that's not dead. 100 players, 500 players, and even maybe 1,000 players, that could be considered dead to me. 4,000? That's not dead. Dean Hall left the DayZ project to climb Mount Everest, and then left entirely after that. That's not entirely true. Dean did take a break from the DayZ project to go climb Mount Everest for 2 months in 2013, from April 1st to June 1st. What Hugbox failed to mention though was that after Dean summited Mount Everest, he returned to the DayZ project to work on it for another 17 months before leaving Bohemia Interactive entirely. 17 months is a pretty long time to just skip over. The development team seemed less accessible than they previously did with Dean on the team, and there were a lot of soon and no ETA messages from the developers. Personally, I would love to have a proper release date for 6.3 beta. That would be amazing, but it's nigh impossible for the developers to give a reliable release date and stick with it every time. It's Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. They've given dates in the past that haven't panned out the way they've wanted, and it just leaves the community unhappy. And because of that, they don't want to make the same mistake again. It makes sense. Now, am I a bit pissed off that I won't see a solid release date for 6.3? Yeah, I am. But I'd rather receive 0.63 beta when it's ready, rather than them giving out a date that they can't fulfill and leaving the community and myself disappointed once again. In the 4 years of development, this is what they've added. Some new clothes, a new gun here, they made the map bigger, and they added the ability to lock doors. Now that, ladies and gentlemen, is comical. I swear, Elon Musk and SpaceX will land a man on Mars and we'll see a Hugbox video titled, "We finally got to Mars, but why aren't we at Andromeda?" No, but for real, there is a ridiculous amount of things that were added and fixed in DayZ Standalone in its 4 years of early access. Here are most of those things. Oh, and by the way, this was sped up a ton. Mods of the original DayZ mod added features that the developers of Standalone said were still a while away. I think I stand with the majority of players when I say this. I would rather play a functioning, finished version of whatever feature that I'm looking to play in the full standalone game than play a half-finished, corner-cut, unpolished version of the feature I'm looking for in a mod of the DayZ mod. Standalone scaled back almost all of its item spawns, which really limited player interaction. Coupled with fresh spawns in the mod could easily find civilian-grade weapons, which would make geared players coming down to the coast play much more cautiously. About the spawn points, that doesn't seem right. DayZ Standalone gave virtually every single building that was unenterable in the mod an interior and item spawn points, so how could it be that the Standalone scaled back almost all item spawns from the mod? Well, to be sure, I asked a developer on the DayZ dev team, and this was the response that I was given. DayZ.62 has about 2,000 unique items that can spawn, and up to 28,000 items spawned in a given world across a few million spawn points. DayZ Mod at the time of standalone launch had less than 100 unique items that could spawn. A world could spawn less than 1,000 given items across less than 10,000 potential spawn points. So if I'm reading this correctly, DayZ Standalone has roughly 20 times the unique amount of spawnable items, approximately 28 times the amount of supported items across hundreds of times more spawn points. Has the definition of a step back changed recently? Because that doesn't seem to make much sense. But hey, could just be me. His second point ties into another one he made later on in the video, and that is that standalone players only find melee weapons on the coast, which makes it far less fun. This one comes down to game design and personal preference. I think the reason why developers don't have an abundance of weapons on the coast is because they want players to move inland and progress across the entire map to get better and better gear everywhere they go. And personally, I don't want gunfights breaking out every 2 minutes after each person spawns, but that's just me. Hugbox then goes on to claim that being unarmed for the first 2 hours of your character's life doesn't make for interesting gameplay. And you know what? I wholeheartedly agree with this statement. But there's only one problem. It doesn't take 2 hours to find a gun in DayZ Standalone, and I know that from experience. But for the sake of showing proof, let's take a spawn on the south coast just west of Electro and see how long it takes me to find a gun. Finding a civilian weapon took me a whopping 30 seconds. Now that wasn't really fair. I got a great spawn next to a couple of houses that I know have a high chance of spawning weapons. So let's do this again and take another spawn on the east coast just south of Berezino and see how long it takes me to find a gun from there. This time I found a gun in just under 6 minutes, and it wasn't a particularly great spawn that I had either. But I guess this entire test is flawed because I have 5,000 hours in the game and Hugbox has only 138. So I took it upon myself to go out and find a couple of players with a similar amount of hours compared to that of Hugbox. I sent out messages on Twitter and YouTube as well as posted on DayZ's subreddit. After a while, I managed to gather 5 people with similar amount of hours to Hugbox with the potential for many more. We're trying to prove a point here and not write a research paper, so I think 5 people will do just fine. I asked all 5 people the same question and told them to answer honestly. These are their responses.
I think about half an hour, 30 minutes.
Usually range from anywhere from like 5 minutes to find like a pistol if I'm lucky, to like 30 minutes or an hour to maybe find a rifle.
Find a gun. 25 minutes.
Probably about 30 minutes.
As you can see, players with similar amount of hours to Hugbox claim to be able to find a gun in DayZ in an amount of time that is far less than what Hugbox claimed in his video. This is one of my personal favorites. PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, better known as PUBG, is DayZ with the boring parts cut out. I guess I'll start off like this, so to protect myself from the PUBG fanboys. I myself am one of them. I really like PUBG. It's a great game. It's a lot of fun, but in no way is it similar to DayZ. Or, I'll correct myself, it would be much less time consuming to list off the similarities between the two games, rather than going through what the games don't have in common with each other. Actually, you know what? Why don't we do that? Both games have first and third person, both games allow you to drive vehicles, and both games allow you to pick up items that are spawned within the world and store them in your player's inventory. That's about where the similarities end between the two games. Now, if you want to get nitpicky, there are obviously some more similarities, but they're much, much smaller. But by all means, if someone wants to compare the games further, feel free to do it in the comments. Rust, along with its development and update cycle, is a topic of conversation within Hugbox's video. I'm not going to dive too deep into that because if I did, this video would be 25 minutes long instead of probably 10 or 12. For anyone who has dabbled in game development, is or has been a game dev at one point, will be able to see that DayZ is a far more complex game to develop than Rust is. That's not to say that Rust is a bad game, because it's obviously not. Rust is a good game. It has a lot of people who really enjoy it. But if you're comparing the development cycle to DayZ, in terms of complexity, it's just not there. That's why they have a smaller team. Again, it makes sense. Most people are tired of survival games after the onslaught of early access DayZ clones like H1Z1. Except H1Z1 isn't a survival game. It's a battle royale shooter. But points for trying, I guess. Legitimately though, no game that is out right now can capture the same feeling that DayZ gives you when you lock eyes for the first time with a fully geared player at the Northwest Airfield. Currently, that feeling is unique to DayZ and DayZ only. That is undeniable. I'm just going to lump all of these next ones together just for time's sake. Bohemia has no incentive to continue developing DayZ, Standalone sold as many copies as it's going to, DayZ is a waste of time and money to continue developing, the PC development won't bring in any new players, the game has already peaked, and console is the only way to make more money, the control scheme isn't suited for a controller. Well, DayZ isn't a waste of time to continue developing, it's obviously going to appeal to more people once the game is finished. Not everyone wants to purchase an early access alpha game. In fact, a couple of days ago, I did a poll on my Twitter asking people who had stopped playing DayZ what they were doing at the moment. 82% of people said that they were waiting for beta, 7% said that they were waiting for full release, and 11% said that they were done playing for good. The poll is obviously very small, I only ran it for a couple of hours because I thought this video would be done by then, but obviously it took much longer. Obviously the information from the poll, and yes I spelled poll wrong, I know, was gathered from people who had already purchased DayZ and are waiting, but you could infer that there's probably still a very large amount of players that have still not purchased the game and are waiting for it to be fully released before they decide to buy it or not. Whether DayZ Standalone has peaked or not is still a mystery to everyone. I would like to hope that the peak of the game has still yet to come, and that we might see it during beta or after full release. As for console, I still see messages on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube every day asking if DayZ is coming to console and when it will happen, so I think it's safe to say that the market for console is still optimistic and probably larger than the remainder of the PC audience who has yet to buy the game. So I guess to say, in conclusion, DayZ is not dead, and it is very evident that that is so. Although DayZ is most definitely not thriving in its current state, but I do believe once beta hits, we'll see thousands of new and old players flock back to the game to give it another try at its highest point yet. Thank you guys so much for watching, I really appreciate it. This video was a nightmare to make and research, so I would appreciate any likes, shares, and comments. Follow me on Twitter at jcon72, the link is down below. Check out my live stream, twitch.tv/jcon72, the link is also down below. And if you haven't already yet, hit that subscribe button for more DayZ videos, but they'll probably be more PvP oriented. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next one.